And hello, everyone. Brad Logan here from a very cold North Mississippi, and Charlie McAlexander from a very cold Nashville. We're going to make it work, Charlie Mac. This is a dream come true for me. It is an honor to be visited with you today, and thanks very much for carving out a few minutes on this cold day.
I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you and what you've done there.
Let's just go ahead and dive right in. Take me back to the day to where you got the call from Ole Miss, and tell us a little bit about what went into that process of being named the voice of the Rebels.
Well, it was totally unexpected. Uh, I got the call. I had a visit from some great Reds over at WLBT TV when I was working there, and it really took me by surprise. And being 30 miles from Ole Miss growing up, and in the heyday of Ole Miss football, all my heroes, I didn't know whether I was ready. I was very, very young, but I accepted, obviously, and then began a 4-year journey there, and so many, many friends, so many players, so many alumni, so many fans still stay in touch, and it's meant a whole lot to me.
I think, Charlie Mack, 72 to 75, 76, 78. How long were you at Ole Miss?
1974 to
74.
77. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Does that include the Notre Dame game?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's go back and talk about it. That's one that everybody remembers down in Jackson, 1977, Ole Miss and Notre Dame. And take us back to that day, Charlie Mack, and tell us about how much fun it was and what you remember about that day.
Remember so much, especially the night before there was a pep rally in Jackson, and they brought up the Ole Miss players on this trailer bed truck and introduced several of them. And then toward the end there, they introduced Tim Ellis, who had been dropped back in the roster, and he said, "Remember me?"
With his hands under the center, his setbacks up Perry and Story. Now he has the snap. He's back to throw. He looks and fires over the middle. It's completed to 45. Running with the football laterally across the field is L.G. Smith to the midfield stripe, to the 40, to the 35-yard line. He's to the Notre Dame 30, to the 25, the Notre Dame 22-yard line. Ross Browner finally brought him down.
I'm Tim Ellis from Louisville. And boy, does everybody remember Tim Ellis big time.
Back to that day in Jackson, it was a big Ole Miss crowd, and it was a season in which Notre Dame would eventually finish undefeated, Charlie Mack, I believe, except to the loss to Ole Miss. What do you remember about the game in and of itself, the whole mantra of Notre Dame, Newt Rockne, and everything coming to Jackson, Mississippi?
Well, what I remember most is the night before, and I went to a gathering with some Notre Dame people, and it was like, we're here, we're going to take care of you. You know, it was a bit of arrogance, and I never have forgotten that. And also the next day, and I remember the look on their faces walking out into the Mississippi humidity and heat and looking at that rebel crowd and thinking, maybe we better rethink this. And then Ole Miss stuck it to him and stuck it to him and stuck it to him and made them breathe so hard. Their hands were on their knees. I remember Ken McAfee, All-American tight end, took a swing at Robert Fabris from Ole Miss. And it just went on from there. And it was a thing from the heart and from the head, not so much Ken Cooper. He was not a very good coach. He was not a communicator. But that team was such a tight-knit group. And thank the good Lord that Jack Carlisle went to Ken Cooper, said, we got to start throwing the ball. You need to put Tim Ellis in there. And so that happened. The rest is history.
So 1975 Sportscaster of the Year, I know that was important for you at a very young age in the state of Mississippi, graduated from Delta State. Tell me a little bit about growing up and when you kind of started getting the bug to be an announcer.
Well, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was a child of the 60s. I played 4 sports in high school. That's all I thought about. Went to Ole Miss as a walk-on, started as a freshman. uh, partied way too much. And so I left my second year, even though I was invited back by Coach Swayze to walk on with the varsity. Got injured. Then I went to Northwest Community College, then Northwest Junior College, great experience, and then on to Delta State. Uh, Another wonderful experience. So I was blessed to go to 3 Mississippi schools and make so many friends, and it will always have so much appreciation for all of those schools and all those people.
And we'll get back to Ole Miss in just a moment, but you've had quite a run over your career, and we'll get to what you're doing now. You've got some exciting news in regards to a book and playing music. But before we do, I'd like to go back and kind of you and I had a conversation about when you were at Ole Miss, you had opportunities to go to other places, but a couple places you did go was at South Carolina, Kentucky, and had a great run where I began to listen to you at Middle Tennessee State University.
Yeah, I've been a lot of places. Can't hit a moving target. Yeah, that was very interesting, and I got to see a lot of things from a lot of schools. And you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's all three. And in the book, I'm going to talk about that and a lot of other things, a lot of comments, a lot of wonderful stories. Everybody likes to hear stories, and I got a bunch of them. I told you one the other day. First year I did the Ole Miss games, my first trip ever to LSU. Ben Williams was playing, and Rick Kimbrough, and a lot of other different people. And went into Tiger Stadium. Nobody was saying anything. And we got up to the stadium in Baton Rouge, went across the railroad tracks, and I heard Ben Williams say, "If you ain't ready, it's too late." So we took a left turn, went through the parking lot, and all of a sudden these bottles were hitting the bus. And the fans from LSU were throwing all kind of debris, kids included. And I thought, whoa, this is different. Then we turned in to go into the locker room, and they were yelling, "Tiger bait, Tiger bait," pulling at your clothes. We go into the locker room, pick up our programs, and Ken Cooper said, "Charlie, go with me and let's walk around the stadium." So we picked up our programs, and unbeknown to us, they had that big tiger right next to the door going out where you couldn't see him. And they had a microphone right in front of that big, massive tiger's mouth. And we go out, open the door, and they turn that sucker loose. They hit him with a cattle prod, and he just roared. And we almost jumped out of our skins. And so Ken said, "Come on, we're going to walk around the field." So we started walking around the field, and back then they'd let the fans in there very, very early. And the people that were in there already had been overserved. And so they started yelling at both of us by name. Threw something at us. And I turned to Ken and I said, "Coach, you're on your own." So I headed back. And that was just one of the stories. And the other, and very quickly, I told you as well, that game, that night, LSU just beat the dog out of us by the half. And I had said, very honestly, I said, Ole Miss doesn't deserve to be on the same field with LSU tonight, which was true. And so there was a knock on the door at halftime, and in the hallway was the head of the Pick-a-Dixie Network. It was sponsored by Texaco then, all over the United States. And then Warner Alford was out there. And I just said, "Boy, this is a tough half." And they said, "Wait a minute, Charlie, did you really say Ole Miss doesn't deserve to be on the same field with LSU tonight?" And I said, "Yes, I did." They said, "Why did you say that?" And I said, "Are you watching the same game I am?" So that's just a couple of stories. I got 60 more of them for a book.
And now, in the stories, are they going to be all across your travels at all the different stops? So,
yeah, heavy.
Something that'll be fun to read.
Very heavy on Mississippi and the Southeastern Conference and all the places I've been. And then a lot of it's the network stuff I've done. I've done a lot of NCAA basketball tournaments and national
Yeah.
games and SEC tournament championship games and stuff like that. So I'll go over everything. And a lot of the colorful personalities that I've come in contact with. And believe it or not, maybe the most colorful of all of them, football coach Horace McCool from Delta State. You talk about a character. We'll go into all of that stuff. And like I said, I've got about 60 stories right now, and I've gotten a lot of help from a man who's had a very successful book, and that's Sparky Reardon, the dean.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to get, and thanks to you, I'm going to reach out to Sparky and get him on the program and talk a little bit more in depth about that book. I want to talk a little bit about the SEC radio network. Now it's much bigger than it was back then, but you did a lot of the SEC tournament. What are some games and some players you remember calling that tournament? Because that's one of my favorite times of the year is the SEC men's basketball tournament.
I had a big game. It was in Atlanta. I did two of them. I did one in Atlanta, and I did one in Memphis. That were really big, and both of them involved Arkansas when they were sensational. One was with Kentucky. Actually, both were with Kentucky. I beg your pardon. And they were both classics. And that was Pitino's heyday and Nolan Richardson's heyday. And those were great games, just right down to the wire. Kentucky won both of them.
Those are some great games back in the 90s. And that's when, like you said, Rick Pitino had a well-oiled machine in Lexington, and then Nolan was rolling. Of course, Nolan, they won the national championship, I believe, in 1994. And I think Kentucky won the year Mississippi State went to the Final Four, Charlie Mack, I think in 1996. So it was a very heavy SEC back in those days. In your days when you talk about South Carolina, Charlie Mack, I know you're there for a while. What do you remember about Columbia?
Well, it's a very different place and a very different athletic department. Just like every other place, you make great friends. You really do, and I did there as well. Not as many as the other places I've been, but I remember the only other time I had been there, I did a football game when Tim Ellis was playing, and it was a very close game, and Ole Miss made a critical drive late in the game to get down to what appeared to be a score. The big play was like a 32-yard third and 32 or something ridiculous like that, high 20s. And Ellis threw a pass to one of the backs out of the backfield. I think it was James Story. And they took it down inside the 10, and then with about 30 seconds left, Ellis hands off, I think it was to Reg Woolard. And he scored. He broke the plane. Well, they had independent officials then that called, officiated South Carolina games along with Memphis State, Louisville, Cincinnati, Southern Mississippi. And they weren't as good as SEC officials. And they didn't make a call. And Ole Miss players raising their hands because he had broken the plane and he had half his body in the end zone. But they did not make a call, and they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited. And back then, the press box at Williams-Brice Stadium was open air, and it was close to the fans. And I kept saying, why don't they make a call? He's scored, and we'll win the game. And I mentioned that a couple of times, and then it was called no touchdown, and it went over on downs. Tim Ellis threw his helmet in the air. Ole Miss fans were upset. We were upset. And then all of a sudden, this fan reaches out and throws a glass of scotch on me, throws it up. And I just licked it off my lips and just kept going. But it was bad. We got hosed.
Yeah. You talked about Ole Miss at LSU. There are a lot of conversations. I know we talked about the Stan Torgerson that preceded you and all of those games back in LSU back in the day. and then now you're talking about back in South Carolina. There's the days of so much speculation back and forth pre-replay. It's just so many story after story after story. You would eventually do a little bit with JP and Fox Sports. What did you do with Jefferson Pilot?
Well, I did several games for them, just different things. I even did a Wofford Furman game, which a lot of people may not know about, but it's a great, great rivalry. Always a head knocker. I did games like that. I did games in Cincinnati. I did games in Los Angeles. This was for Host Communications and CBS Radio. I did games in Philadelphia at the Spectrum, the old Spectrum, all kinds of places, which I really, really enjoyed. I worked with some great crews with Host Communications and CBS. Brad Sham, and it goes on and on and on. And
Brad Sham, of course, the voice of the radio voice of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, he did that for years, and he worked for Host for a long time. He did Major League Baseball. And I learned a lot, really learned a lot.
It's an incredible resume, and we would be here all day, Charlie Mack, if we went through all of it. But I'd love to kind of reflect back, kind of circle back to Ole Miss and your time at Oxford. What are some fond memories that you had while serving in Oxford, and what is some things that you'll always keep close to your vest?
The relationship with the players, I wasn't much older than they were. And so many of them, we remained friends on Facebook and on the telephone, especially Tim Ellis and Rick Kimbrough. We're still very, very close, and they mean so much to me, and a lot of those players did. The bad thing about that time there was we had a lot of really good players, and Ken Cooper was the wrong choice for Ole Miss. He didn't relate to players. The players didn't really like him very much. He wasn't a good coach. And we had, just like we beat Georgia back to back when they're in the top 10, as usual, and Oxford on a strange scheduling deal. We beat LSU and Jackson, one heck of a play. There was another Tim Ellis pass that Michael Sweet called. It just goes on and on and on. And then we lost games because we were too conservative. We had the talent. We had a lot of horses, and we didn't use them. But I love those guys to this day. And I love that school to this day, along with Northwest and Delta State. Big place in my heart. And at my age, I've always appreciated things and relationships. And I cherish them deeply, and I do to this day.
When you think back to your time at Delta State, obviously, Charlie Mack, as you know, friend of this program, Coach Cooley is stepping down after an incredible career.
Well,
Delta State headed off to Ole Miss. Delta State now under Coach Kennison, the athletic director, former baseball coach, won a national championship in the early 2000s. Tell me about a little bit of your time at Delta State, and what do you remember about Cleveland?
Everything. I was so surprised when I went there. I was set up as a walk-on at Delta State, as most of us were. And Boo Farish, one of the finest people I've ever known, along with Archie Manning, it's a tie there, let me come in there and have a chance to play. And wouldn't you know it, after we'd gone through fall baseball practice, Coach Ferris decided to go back to his alma mater, Mississippi State, as an assistant AD. Well, they brought in Don Ward, a coach from Hattiesburg, who'd been at Southern Mississippi, and he was not the same guy as Boo Ferris, but he inherited Coach Ferris's players, and he cut me, and he cut a lot of us, actually. And so that was the end of that. And but I just talk about an experience. If anyone has never been to Delta State, they need to go. It's a really special place. The Delta's a real special place.
I've always, as I told you, I received my master's degree at Delta State. It's a very, very special place to me. We also share that we both attended Northwest Community College. Senatobia has really grown, Charlie Mack, since you were there and since I were there. But I really enjoyed my time at Northwest.
Yeah, when I went to Northwest, I thought I was going to get to play a little football and baseball, but I was ineligible, so I couldn't play. So Bob Whitwell, who's a very successful attorney, who was an outstanding player, he was an All-State, he was a Mississippi All-Star from Senatobia, very good friend. He was in my wedding. So I was out there in the spring. He said, Charlie, he said, you need to catch some passes. I was a quarterback in high school in Holly Springs. And so I go out in the spring in sweats, and I'm catching everything in sight. So spring practice. And junior college football was, you talk about hard hitters and fights over and over again. Well, I go out there, and I'm decked out in that great-looking silver helmet, that red and blue of Northwest and gray, and they don't bring a football out. And I thought, man, this is strange. And we had an Oklahoma drill with no football. And so everybody just beat the crap out of each other. And I went to the coach, Coach Peterson at the time, and said, Coach, I don't mind catching a few passes, but I'm no pugilist. And so that was the end of that.
It was a heck of a place. And like you said, days were a lot different back then. Even when I was there 20 some odd years ago, football practice was much different. I want to go back to the year real quick before we let you go, Charlie Mack. In 1975, when you won Sportscaster of the Year in Mississippi, just that year was interesting because listen to this. If I were to tell you this, you would say Ole Miss had an incredible year. They finished with beating LSU and Jackson 17-13, beating Tennessee and Memphis 23-6, and beating Mississippi State and Jackson 13-7 in the Egg Bowl. By the way, the week before that, they had beaten Vanderbilt 17-7. You would think, boy, they had a great year. But they started the year off losing to Georgia, Alabama. They lost to Tulane, Texas A&M, Baylor. I think what you were pointing out is Ole Miss was just so much of a roller coaster. That year was crazy in and of itself, is to beat those type teams, but yet lose to the other teams. And those were also times where Ole Miss would lose to Southern Miss from time to time as well.
It happened all the time, and it was indeed crazy. And then 76 and 77 came along, even better teams, and winning big ball games and the losing games we never should have lost. I mean, we weren't going to be undefeated, but heck, we would have won a lot of games and been in major bowls a couple of those years, especially 76, 77.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking back over there. South Carolina really had Ole Miss's number back then, beating Ole Miss. LSU winning 45-0 in Baton Rouge. By the way, that was the game you and I were talking about. They were throwing bottles. It was 31-0 at halftime, and I think that's where some of the players looked around and said, "I don't know about all this." But Ole Miss would finish up beating Mississippi State 28-11. What do you remember about playing Southern Miss? Because that's something that Ole Miss hasn't done since the 1980s.
Well, I love that series, and Southern Mississippi is really, really, really good. I mean, you're looking at players like Ray Guy. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The Cookie Monster. I mean, just so many great players. And they were tough to play. So was Memphis State then.
Yeah.
They were dead gum good. It was just a different time. It's all changed now. And unfortunately, those rivalries are going away. And they have gone away. But back then, man, you're looking at a schedule that was, it's brutal now. Don't get me wrong, but schedule back then for us was really tough. Just like when we lost at Baylor and Texas A&M, they're both in the top 10. We lost in the final play of the game at Texas A&M in College Station. Pass to Rick Kimbrough that was broken up, could have been pass interference. Baylor was a really, really good ball game. So back to back, and then we come home and we're beat all to heck and back. But that's the way it was, and I'll always remember it.
I skipped over a question, Charlie Mack. I apologize. I was listening to some radio calls, and a familiar voice came across the radio waves from the 1970s. Lyman Helms.
Oh, boy.
Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Lyman and how much you enjoyed working with him.
He was wonderful. You talk about not only, I mean, he was a great, great human being. He liked everybody. He cared for everybody. He loved Ole Miss. He loved his job and his family. And I appreciated Lyman, but as the years have gone by, I appreciate him much, much, much more. Loved him. Always will.
You know, I was looking back and listening to some calls, and you and I talked, you know, extensively about the radio network. And of course, David Kellum followed Tom Stocker, who was there for a couple of years. And then Lyman was with Tom. And of course, he was with David for a while
Yeah.
before David would have two more color analysts. Of course, now Harry Harrison, they do a wonderful job on the Ole Miss Radio Network. But, you know, kind of looking back at some of those games, you had some great partners. And I know it was so much fun over the years, but I'd have to ask, if you look back throughout your career, specifically in football, who's the most talented player, no matter what team you were working for or what home or away? What's the most talented player that you can remember, or one of the more talented players you remember covering as an announcer?
Okay, here we go. I'll probably give you five.
Okay.
Ray Guy, Archie Manning, Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker. I would love to have called a game, though he was playing at Arkansas, one of my all-time greats, Lance Allworth. I wish I could have. Paul Hofer was another great one. Very exciting. I love Bo Bowen because of his toughness and his grit. South Carolina, Phil Petty was so dadgum good, and I really, he went through a tough time with Lou Holtz, but he won some big ball games, beat Georgia twice, won a lot of huge games. Gosh, there were just so many. Florida, never did a game with Steve Spurrier. Obviously, we're about the same age. Wish I could have. Chris Collinsworth at Florida. Walter Payton was a great friend. For a long time. Got some stories in the book about him and Jackson State, and Robert Brazil, one of the all-time great linebackers at Jackson State. Coaches like Marino Kazem at Alcorn State. Basketball and football coaches from both schools. Millsaps. Harper Davis. Got a lot of great memories about Harper Davis. Hill Denson at Southern Mississippi. One of the greatest baseball coaches you will ever see. Ray Tanner at South Carolina. I was just really fortunate working with Rick Pitino, Eddie Fogler. It just goes on and on and on, and it will be in the book. And I think people will enjoy it because it'll be a different perspective. I'll give my own opinion about coaches, the best to work for, the worst to work for, the most colorful, the biggest jerks. I mean, I'm going to touch on them all. And I think people should know what I've got to say. I hope they do anyway. It's my opinion.
Yeah. And shifting over a little bit to basketball, do you remember some players in basketball that you remember covering that were just out of this world?
Too many to count.
Yeah.
I didn't cover, but I saw Johnny Newman a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the best basketball players I ever saw was Donnie Kessinger at Ole Miss. Keith Carter was one hell of a player.
Yeah.
The athletic director at Ole Miss. Then I went to Vanderbilt, and I gave the moniker to their team, the Bomb Squad. They had 6 players at Vanderbilt under C.M. Newton that shot well over 40% from 3. Barry Goheen, Barry Booker, Scott Stroud, Charles Mays, goes on and on. Then Kentucky. That's the greatest basketball experience anyone can ever have at Rupp Arena. And it was just unbelievable. The greatest places I've ever called games, basketball by far, is Rupp Arena. And also you can throw in Memorial Gym back in the day with C.M. Newton and Eddie Fogler. Also at South Carolina, Eddie Fogler had great teams, B.J. Mackey and Watson, and it just goes on and on and on. And I'll even go way, way back to Marshall Academy in Holly Springs, Mississippi. When I was just getting started, we taped the games, played a state championship at the old basketball arena. It was like a big Quonset hut in Starkville.
Yeah.
And I forget who they played now. But guess who had the game-winning shot for Marshall Academy for the
Who's
state
that?
champion? Chuck Ronzaville.
Are you kidding me?
Right in front of me. It was about a 25-footer, and he swished it. Just a lot of memories.
Appreciate you joining us. I know you've got a lot. Real quick before we get out of here, tell us about your musical career.
Well, believe it or not, and you've got a video that you'll probably share it sometime, maybe during.
2 in the morning, too hot to sleep, tossing and turning and a twisting the sheet, feeling old weakness coming on strong. Windows wide open in a back bedroom, smell of sweet honeysuckle in bloom. I feel that old weakness coming on strong. Feel like I'm running real low on willpower. Can't get you out of this heart of mine.
We got a hell of a band. It's C-Max Blues Band. I had 8 players in the band. We got a tremendous horn section, all Nashville musicians. Got a great Mississippian, Fish Mickey, on the keyboards from the Delta. Terrific. And folks will see from this interview, and you've got it, I think it runs 3 minutes long. We're trying to get bookings down there too. Love to come back home and play. Love to get the Ole Miss and play, or Cleveland, or wherever it might be. So if folks will take a look at that, they give me a call. If I can give you the number, is that okay?
Absolutely. So I'm going to flash it on the screen for everybody too.
Okay, 615-483-4609.
We got it.
Hey, I want to come down there and play before they plant me, man.
Oh, you got
I'm
plenty of
still
years
rolling.
left.
Oh, I think so.
Do you have any more years left in the broadcast booth?
No, that's over, and right now I wouldn't want to do it. Too much politics, too much money. No, I really wouldn't. I'll go with the great memories, and I'll be pulling for my teams, Ole Miss, Northwest, and Delta State.
He's Charlie McAlexander, now living around the Nashville area, kind enough to join us here on a very cold day in North Mississippi. But we've made it work thanks to the ingenious generators and everything that we've got to help us bring you everything here on the Believe in Ole Miss podcast. Charlie Mack, thank you once again, and it's been a privilege, and we appreciate you joining us here today.
Hey, love everybody. Give them my best, and thank you very much, and keep up the good work. You're something special, brother.
Well, appreciate that, Charlie Mack.